be involved in for the 2012 year or 2014 year. And that is going to be part of their agenda. Okay. And I'm not saying, I'm only trying to highlight this as things you'd want to communicate as a leader. You know, you could argue, well, I can make a video, or I can put out an email, or I can do other things, and maybe you would do that, or maybe you would, there's lots of ways you can communicate. I want to give this example as a way to think about one instance. Communications, this would be one out of 100 things you might do. Okay? So this idea of communication, and it's not just you to them, but it says two-way communication. Do you have any mechanisms for the employees to communicate with you? Okay, so let's think about it for a minute. This is, you've given the presentation part of the meeting. Updates, recognition, vision and plan, new changes, okay? And you're looking for, ways to potentially get two-way communication. What's some things you might do? Yes, sir.
Assigning a day in months, the first Wednesday or whatever, to assign the time for the staff to meet the leader in his office one by one.
You could arrange times for people to do that, and you could talk about that, sure. What's some other two-way communications you could talk about?
Meeting them in workplace, like when leader is going to visit the factory or whatever.
You could.
Talk directly to the person.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Sometimes presidents of companies have hotlines that are just for employees to be able to call in, and if you have like a voicemail system where employees can call in with quality ideas or concerns.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something that, at least on paper, it's presented as it's a direct line to the head of the company.
Yeah. If you're going to be getting ready to sit down and eat, and you've got yourself and maybe, half a dozen, 5 or 6 other top managers, where are you going to eat? Think about it. Should you all eat together? Probably not, because y'all eat together all the time, yes? Any day of the week, take the company American Express, go eat for lunch. Happens all the time. Where should you go eat?
People that you don't see very often.
Abby's right. People you don't see very often, which is probably people on the lowest levels of the organization. I would spread out all 6 or 7 of you. Don't sit at the same table and sit with different people. Yes? People you don't know. And this would be great advice for you at any conference, at any big meeting you go to, is to meet new people. Don't sit with the people you know all the time. Does you no good. Meet somebody you don't know. Right. So this is an opportunity. This is an example of one meeting as an opportunity to sit down and eat with somebody. And when you sit down and eat, what are you going to talk about?
Not work.
Not work. Not 1 ounce of work. Right? Why? Why are we not going to talk about work?
Get to know them personally.
You get to know them personally. Brent, why is that important?
Makes them realize that you're human and you're not just some robot, and that you actually care for your employees outside of work.
Right. Absolutely. You're going to talk about maybe their family or some football game or something that's not work. I would probably ask them, what's going on with the family, anything new, what have you. Struck up that conversation on a personal level would be one suggestion. And I'm giving you thoughts about communication because it's so difficult. Really is, about trying to get out there. And you can put an email out there, but it's only going to reach 25% of the employees, and everybody else doesn't have email. How's that going to work? You can put it on a company website, but that's only going to reach a certain percentage. I've worked with an organization that had a company intranet, right, where they have things on their private servers that can be accessed from all over the world. And there are things you could put out there, success stories and safety improvements and quality changes that anybody in the world could go from and learn about. But people have got to go looking for it, right? So I'm communicating our improvements in safety and quality by putting it on the company intranet, but no one's going out and looking for it. So it's going to be a huge challenge for, I'm telling you, to try to communicate and talk to people. One of the things you can do, and we'll talk more about this next time, is create some teams or committees, if you'd like, where they're working on improving safety or quality or some project, but they're communicating weekly or monthly, and they're working on something, and now you got a lot more communication going. Teams are one of the very foundational things you can do to improve communication. And I would highly encourage you to use it. You'll see that it's one of the topics in this class is teams. And my presentation next time is not going to be the end-all, be-all of teams. You're going to see that. It's just one presentation on teams. But I'm encouraging you to try it. Most of my consulting is working with teams, and it's very powerful what you can accomplish. These are some things that I put together on improving communication, giving employee a voice, listening to people. When it says active listening, you're actually listening to what they have to say rather than your response to what they have to say. And so there's lots of things we can do to improve communication. Let's talk a little bit about trust. Okay? Now, slide 24 has a few items about that, where if you delegate authority and responsibility, trying to give some of the decision-making to people that are capable of making it, that's not you. Right? You're delegating that authority and responsibility, and it gives them some, higher-level activities to do, and takes it off your plate, and you're showing trust by giving that task to them. Yes? One thing you can do. You can, we talked about this before, removing status symbols. What's the example I talked about?
Parking lot.
The parking lot, big time, right? Reserved parking, covered parking, special executive parking, executive dining rooms, those sorts of things can be removed to remove status symbols. Training, everybody, I think, can benefit, but it's also an investment in your people. You're certainly, what we spoke about earlier, is recognizing and rewarding the performance you want. A lot of times recognition is cheap. If you're at that company meeting and you bring a few employees up that have accomplished something, and what I've been a part of in the most recent years of my consulting is they'll give out gift cards of a nominal value, and employees are thrilled to have it, and they're brought up in front of all their other employees, their peers, and recognized. A round of applause, take a picture, and put it onto the wall somewhere. It's very inexpensive, but yet very effective. And then let's talk about this model. And I like to talk about Tom. He was, at the time that I was working with small business in the Dallas area, we had a breakfast every Wednesday morning to bring in leaders in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and talk about the same topics that we're talking about here. And Tom was a consultant who was coming in and obviously looking for customers to work with. And he gave us this slide years ago to add to our presentation. And older gentleman, very unassuming, always wore dressed very nice, and always had great advice. Really, you asked him about something, he would be able to give you some very sound advice, and someone that you could really look to as a sounding board. And he gave us this slide, and I'm going to talk about it, then I'm going to tell you his story. He talked about making and keeping agreements. So if you make an agreement, you better be able to keep it. And he would talk about that, because if you can do that, that's going to establish some credibility for you and your organization, your team, that will promote some open communication and increase trust. Now, some examples of that I'm going to give, and then I'll come back to Tom. And this is very simple, silly examples. But early on, my kids were playing soccer, and they were not aggressive. They were not going after the ball, not trying to score goals. And we were about halfway through the season, and daughter hadn't scored a goal, and I knew she was capable, so I told her, you score a goal, we're going to McDonald's, which in our house is a major reward because there's toys to be had and there's ice cream to be eaten. Sure enough, right then and there, bam, goal. I was like, okay, I found whatever leverage point I needed. I have found it, all right? And so when do you think we went to McDonald's? When do you think?
Immediately. Right after.
Immediately after. It has to be absolutely right after the game, before you go home. Yes?
Yes.
Because in a child's mind, time is right now. Right now.
Finish the game.
Well, yeah, there was some concern about how many goals equaled how much ice cream. So there was some discussion of that.
Negotiating.
Yes. I then went to, missing aside, but I said, well, I'll just come out ahead. I'll give her $1 a goal. And then I started losing money even further. But if you are going to make an agreement, you better be able to keep it, and you better be able to control the ability to execute the agreement. Does that make sense to everybody? And this is a sad story, but I know that one of the young ladies at our church was recruited to play soccer here years ago and was promised a scholarship. Well, in the world of athletics, okay, that usually means everything is free. Your books, your tuition, where you live, and what you eat is all paid for, right? Well, come to find out, it wasn't an athletic scholarship the coach was promising, but an academic scholarship, because he saw her grades and knew that if she has these grades, she's likely to get an academic scholarship, and it was probably true. But he didn't control the resources. It's an academic scholarship. It's sitting over in somebody else's pile of money. Yes? He controlled the athletic scholarships on the soccer team, but did not control the academics. And of course, that academic scholarship was probably half of what the athletic was going to be. The academic maybe have covered $4,000, or this was going to cover $8,000 per year, whatever it was. It was a significant difference. Come to find out, she didn't get the academic scholarship at all. Played soccer for somebody else. Okay, so he promised something he couldn't deliver. So translation for us as managers, don't promise a bonus if you can't deliver it. Don't promise a raise, you can't deliver it. You want to be able to make sure. I'd rather promise something very, very conservative and be able to over-deliver. Right? So you got to make and keep agreements. Right? If you make an agreement but then don't keep it, people will not trust you. So if I say we're going to have a test, when's our next test, Joey? You look out there and see.
It's on the Sunday, November the 3rd.
Sunday, November 3rd. I'm telling you, we're going to have a test at 7 o'clock on the 3rd. And you go on there, and it's 7:05 on the 3rd, and there's no test. And you send me a text message or call me and say, oh, yeah, well, we're not going to have it. Well, you would not be happy. Part of you would be happy, but then part of you would not be happy. Well, Ryan said we were going to have a test, and I've studied all weekend. I read my Zap book. I went through all the chapters, went through all the slides. I'm ready. And you know what I'm talking about as a student. You've gotten yourself ready to take that test. You really don't want it to be even one day later, right? You've prepared yourself for that moment. And it's not there. It's like, well, I'm not so happy with him. And then if I tell you the final test is going to be when? When do I have the final test, Joey?
December 8th.
That's December.
What now?
December 8th.
Now Holly's telling me it's December 8th. Now you're doubting if I'm going to have it on the 8th, right? There's some doubt in your mind. Agreed?